Welcome to the Daily Devo. My name is Grant, and today we're talking about getting found in the mess. I remember being really little and visiting my grandfather's house. He lived at the edge of town, and one of my favorite things is that he lived on this kind of pond, lake sort of thing. The older I get, the more I realize how small the body of water was. But this is what I love to do. I loved going down to his little Morton shed at the end of the driveway, grabbing my fishing pole and tackle box. And he had this bench that was right next to the lake. And I would sit there on the bench and I would cast out my line. And he had stocked the lake full of catfish and grass carp and bluegill. And I would try fishing and fishing and fishing. And I would sit out there for what felt like to a little kid 2 to 3 hours, what was probably more like 20 to 30 minutes. And every once in a while, I would get lucky and I would catch something on my own merit. But my grandfather had this really cool way of always coming through. I would begin to get angry and frustrated, and I would try everything that I could do to try to catch a fish, and it just wouldn't work. And then eventually, my grandfather would come out from the Morton shed, and he'd have this big green bucket. And in this bucket was, I don't want to call it cheating, but it was basically cheating. He would get all the catfish feed that he had in this big bucket, and he would just start throwing it in the water in front of this bench that I would sit on. And almost instantly, you would see all these mouths coming up out of the water, just whoop, 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 grabbing all of the fish food. And lucky for me, catfish are, well, catfish. And they would eventually snag on to my line, and I would reel it in. And there would just be this great moment of like, hey, I did it, I have it, I caught this fish. But it was only after going through what felt like an eternity of frustration for little me to get there. Life, though, when we get older, it gets real and it gets complicated. It's a lot more complicated than fishing at your grandfather's lake and not going your way. What's probably happened at this point is you found yourself in a mess. You've found yourself in situations you don't know how to get yourself out of, but you've already begun the process. I wish it was as easy as grandfathers just showing up and fixing the problem. Some of us have found ourselves in financial situations that we never meant to get there, but all of a sudden we're looking at credit card debt. We are looking at an amount of student loans that we don't even remember taking them out. We just remember going to the classes and wishing we had taken them more seriously. We're looking at a car payment that we thought we were going to be able to afford, and 3 months later, you're realizing how stressful it is. You're dealing with marital strife that you never imagined on the day of your wedding day would happen, but now all of a sudden, you find yourself being really, really short-tempered, or you guys don't communicate the way that you thought you would. You've found yourself at a workplace where at one point it was your dream job, and now that new manager has come in and it just isn't everything you thought it was going to be. Maybe you've caught yourself in an addiction that you didn't see coming. Or maybe there are sin habits that at first it was like, oh, I gave into that temptation one time, and here you are going back to this something again and again and again. We slowly drifted like a boat out on the ocean further and further away from where we were supposed to be. You see, you and I, we never set out to find ourselves lost and far away. So let's see what it has to say in Psalm 18 through 19. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The first thing I want you to see is this, is while little me fishing at my grandfather's lake didn't necessarily cry out for help, what my grandfather did see is someone that needed a little bit of help and was maybe in over his head. And maybe you're at a spot right now where you're kind of just anxiously awaiting the moment where people finally realize that it isn't working out. Where someone finally comes alongside you and says, hey, I see that you're struggling and I see that you need a little bit of help. Here's the reality. We can continue to drift further and further away, but at some point, we're going to need to admit that you and we need help. Here's the truth about people who hit rock bottom. People always say, I hit rock bottom, and at my lowest point, that's where Jesus found me. But did you know that it can always get worse than rock bottom? Confrontation, it can really, really suck, but confrontation is also where growth is. Repentance is where we become more like Christ. You don't get to be more like Jesus without putting off more and more of your sin, more and more of your flesh, more and more of who you are apart from God. You can't become more like God without it. But in the Christian life, repentance, turning away from our old self and turning to our new self, can be painful. But where God leads us is a place where we do not deserve. Where can you ask for help? Where can you actually come to the Lord and say sometime in your quiet time today in prayer, God, I know that I'm stuck in this. And I know that I can't get out of it without confrontation, without you speaking into it, without me turning to you, without you coming in and helping me when I don't really deserve it. Thank you for watching the Daily Devo.